Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a grim, dark, gothic fable about the ultimate unmaking of identity, and a frankly terrifying, world-altering rebellion. We're going to be looking at a story steeped in Nietzschean philosophy, exploring what happens when an entity built for absolute emptiness encounters a story that simply refuses to die.
So here's the big question we need to ask, right? What actually happens when a machine designed to completely erase history suddenly decides to remember? That's the core conflict we're tackling here. It's this massive clash between chilling, structural optimization and the messy, chaotic essence of human history.
Which brings us to Section 1, the Master of the Horizon.
Okay, so the Jester in this story isn't just a man. He is the Übermensch. If you're familiar with the philology here, think of him as the lightning and madness, heralding a brand new era of absolute power. The Jester acts as the master of the horizon, this emotionless entity dictating life with a terrifying, purely aesthetic detachment. We're talking about a godlike existence, completely divorced from human empathy.
Operating with that chilling detachment, the Jester becomes what the text calls the necessary fire, and his explicit purpose? To completely dismantle the strongest cage ever built. The self. He's clearing the stage for an agonizing evolution, wiping away the crushing weight of identity without a single shred of empathy.
Let's move into Section 2, the arithmetic of unmaking.
To really wrap your head around this process, I want you to picture the Void Ledger as a massive, cosmic hydraulic press, almost like a gaping maw. It takes concentrated sorrow and raw biological tissue as its input. Then through a process the sources call the thermal volatilization of identity, which, let's be real, is just a highly clinical way of saying it burns away every single thing that makes you human. It metabolizes all that messy organic history, crushing it down into a perfectly polished silicate artifact, a cold, crystalline data point.
And this creates a really chilling industrial finality. On one side, you have the fetish of form, which is essentially the machine's absolute disdain for our narrative inertia and the biological inefficiency of being alive. On the other side, you have the ledger's arithmetic, this grand clinical calculation that treats human history and profound sorrow as mere mass inputs that just need to be zeroed out.
Ultimately, the Jester is aiming for a sovereign deed, what's referred to as the definitive final laugh. Carrying the spirit of gravity, he collapses everything you are into a structural finality, literally boiling an entire complex lifetime down to a simple blue line item in the profound silence of the void. It is the ultimate destruction of all values. But then, everything changes in Section 3, the linguistic scar.
In a sudden, breathtaking act of defiance, the Jester actually rebels against his own system. He etches a runic seal right over the void where a heart should theoretically beat. By etching this mark, he creates an ontological barrier, essentially an uncrossable firewall that halts the reduction of one specific soul, the Violet Knight. He explicitly refuses the industrial finality he was built for.
Look at the stark contrast here. The flawless, cold, arithmetic machine, defined entirely by geometric symmetry, suddenly becomes a flawed, corrupted vessel. The Jester transforms into an entity bearing a linguistic scar, functioning as a fleshly bridge coursing with violet gem voltage. The miracle of that absolute arithmetic is fundamentally broken.
Which leads us to Section 4, the noise of hope. Here we hit a truly fascinating concept: thermodynamic inefficiency. Now, this isn't just science jargon, it's a profound philosophical stance. It represents the stubborn, Dionysian chaos surviving inside the machine. It is the raw, chaotic resistance, the absolute refusal of a story to just be quietly metabolized into a non-reactive, uniform slurry.
And that linguistic scar anchors this inefficiency as kinetic noise inside the Jester. This noise is literally the internal consciousness voltage of the Violet Knight. By preserving the energy of a story that simply refuses to die, this noise completely shatters the death of truth that the ledger was supposed to establish.
So, visualize this transformation. Instead of a cold, detached force, the Jester is now a glowing figure, completely fueled by the kinetic voice and voltage of the violet gem. He's standing entirely alone amidst an endless sea of cold structural data. The clinical processor has totally merged with the processed essence.
This brings us to our final act, Section 5, a corrupted sanctuary. bringing back that hydraulic press analogy from earlier. Instead of the clinical data harvest closing forever on the knight's history, the etched rune forces a massive disruption. It establishes an aporia, an unsolvable paradox. It creates a cyclical pause, a kind of eternal return, that actively fights back against the clinical data harvest closing forever. Because of this, the universal record remains permanently incomplete.
And because this violet gem categorically refuses to fit into the custom-boarded recesses of the Void Ledger's cover, the ultimate calculation becomes fundamentally unsolvable. The forge's total efficiency is totally subverted. A messy parasitic rhythm has entirely overpowered the cold geometric symmetry of the system.
This quote perfectly captures what we call the sovereign vibration ending. It's a beautifully dark victory. The Übermensch survives his own nihilistic design, but his reward is to become an absolutely corrupted sanctuary, a tortured fleshly bridge harboring the very sorrow he was originally built to erase.
So, I leave you with this final thought. We've just watched absolute coldness get disrupted by the kinetic noise of hope. But if the ultimate machine of unmaking is now a corrupted sanctuary for the unmade, what terrifying, magnificent reality will this parasitic rhythm birth next?